Good morning. Thank you for joining today's daily webinar where we discuss specific topics. We also go over your questions live on the air. Today's topic is private investments in my 401k. I know this has been a hot topic since Trump's first administration, and there's been more updates on it recently. We'll go over that. As always, today's webinar is for educational purposes. As always, please like our YouTube channel, share it with others to help get the word out to other solopreneurs like yourself. All right, let's get started. And as questions come up, go ahead and shoot them over and we'll pause and jump over to the questions, and then we'll jump back to discuss today's topic, which again, it's private investments in my 401k. So, what is a private equity investment, aka private company investment? Well, as the word private implies, it is an alternative investment in private stock instead of publicly traded stock. Publicly traded stocks include Walmart, Coca-Cola Company, Home Depot, to name a few. And publicly traded companies are traded on an exchange, whether it's the NASDAQ or the Dow Jones, for example. Whereas private companies, aka private stock, it is not traded on a public exchange. So as a result, when you invest in a private company, aka private investment, whether through personal money or through your 401k, you're not going to know the value of that company because it's not on a public exchange. For example, I can go and search for the market value of Apple, Google, or Facebook on a daily basis because they are traded on an exchange, that being the NASDAQ. There's no such exchange for private companies. So with the private company investment, the funds are actually pooled together and then they're invested in a private company. Now, under Trump's first administration, he really lobbied for allowing private investments in 401k plans, specifically traditional 401k plans. Those are 401k plans subject to Title I of ERISA, as well as 401k plans that are offered to what's referred to as common law employees, so non-owner employees. So a traditional 401k typically has W-2 common law employees who are not owners in the business. Now, interestingly enough, private equity investments have been made in other types of 401ks and even IRAs for easily over 20 years. For instance, many self-directed IRA custodians have allowed for private investments in self-directed IRAs, and they still do. Same thing with solo 401k plans, which are plans for the self-employed, as the word solo implies. It's for non-owner, it's for owner-only businesses, I should say. It's not for non-owner employees. So non-owner employees, they participate in what's referred to as traditional 401k plans. And that's where the private investment is now occurring, as well as in traditional 401k plans, those with common law employees. Now, what are others saying about being able to invest your traditional 401k in private investments? Well, there are some proponents out there against it. They're saying that it's more costly because it has a higher expense ratio. They're saying it's more risky because it's not traded on an exchange, so it's not publicly traded, so you don't know the price of that investment on a daily basis. It's also pooled in a smaller bucket as opposed to a publicly traded stock where you have thousands of investors. They also are saying that there is less transparency, meaning that the valuation is not available on a daily basis like a publicly traded stock, resulting in less measuring of performance. So you don't really know how well that private investment is doing versus a publicly traded investment. So that's what a lot of proponents out there are saying. Now, as I mentioned, as far as who allows for private investments in your 401k, well, as I stated, self-directed IRAs do allow for it through custodians like trust companies. Solo 401k plans with checkbook control, aka self-directed solo 401k plans, allow for it. As I've mentioned, they've allowed for it for easily 20 plus years. Now, from a traditional investment perspective, many companies out there are allowing for it now. One example is Empower. They're one of the biggest providers of traditional 401k plans in the industry. And Empower has actually partnered with several private investment fund managers out there and custodians. Some of those are Apollo, Franklin Templeton, Goldman Sachs, Neuberger Berman, PIMCO, Partners Group, just to name a few. So they've partnered with those outfits to offer private investments. Now let's switch over regarding making private investments inside a self-directed solo 401k plan. And my solo 401k financial offers such investment, and they've been doing so since 2009, and many other clients have invested in private investments through their self-directed solo 401k plan. Let me share my screen here. And again, please like our video, share it with others in your network to help get the word out to other solopreneurs like yourself. And go ahead and shoot over any questions you might have here on the daily live webinar. That's the purpose of these webinars, is to answer questions live that you might have, whether it's a question surrounding solo 401k plans or even self-directed IRAs. We are well versed in both types of retirement plans. So again, a self-directed solo 401k allows for investing in private investments, so private company investments, also known as private equity. Of course, there are certain rules that apply when you make investments in a private placement. A private placement falls under the alternative investment category. Other investments that fall under the alternative investment category are real estate, tax liens, promissory notes, precious metals, even cryptocurrency can fall under that alternative investment umbrella. And you have certain regulations as a result that have to be followed. So here's a great slide here that talks about how to make a private equity investment under a self-directed solo 401k plan. So when you make an investment in a private placement, private company through your self-directed solo 401k, the investment paperwork needs to be titled in the name of the solo 401k plan, listing you as the trustee of the solo 401k plan because it's the plan that's making the investment. So you need to make sure that the private investment documents, such as the private offering memorandum, lists, as well as the subscription agreement, lists the solo 401k as the investor. Now you being the business owner or the trustee of the solo 401k plan. So you are the one that signs those private investment documents. Once those private investment documents have been signed, then it's time to make that private investment. That private investment will be done by sending money from your solo 401k bank or brokerage account directly to the private investment firm. So this slide here provides the steps involved in making a private investment in a company using your solo 401k plan. Well, obviously, the first step is you need to make sure you open up a solo 401k plan whose plan allows for making private investments. Not all companies allow for making private investments through your solo 401k plan. Companies that do not allow for private investments through their solo 401k are typically traditional brokerage firms, as well as banks and insurance companies. Those companies offer solo 401k plans, but they typically do not allow for investing in private companies, aka private equity. But if you open up a self-directed solo 401k with a provider such as my solo 401k financial, their plan does allow for investing a solo 401k in private equity, aka private companies. So that's first, make sure you open that self-directed solo 401k. Once that self-directed solo 401k has been opened, then it's time to open up the holding accounts, which can be a bank account or a brokerage account. And then you want to make the contribution to that bank or brokerage account in the name of the solo 401k plan. It can also be funded by transferring IRAs and or former employer plans to that solo 401k. So there are many methods of funding that solo 401k plan. Then once you identify the private investment that you want to make, that private investment needs to be documented. And the investment entity, the sponsor, will provide the necessary documents, such as the investment memorandum and subscription agreement, for you to fill out. And for clients of my solo 401k financial, they will actually review those memorandums and subscription agreement and walk you through it to make sure you complete it correctly from a solo 401k investment side of things. Once that investment has been executed, that means the documents have been signed, then it's time to fund the investment. That investment can be done by writing a check from your self-directed solo 401k bank or brokerage account, or it can be done by wire, where you wire the funds directly to the investment sponsor. So it's pretty straightforward with respect to funding a private placement, private equity investment, as long as you work with the solo 401k company that understands those rules and can shepherd you through the process of completing the investment documents. That's usually the toughest piece of it. Now, going forward after that investment has been made, it's important to understand that just like any other investment, anytime there are any funds paid out, those funds from that private investment would flow back to the solo 401k holding account, aka the bank or brokerage account. Why? Because that investment was made by the solo 401k plan. Just like if you invest a solo 401k in a publicly traded stock, and that stock pays a dividend, those dividends go back to the solo 401k. So same concept with the private investment. Now, you want to make sure that you don't actually later on try to purchase that private investment that's owned by the solo 401k. Don't try to purchase that with your personal funds. You're not allowed to have your personal funds purchase that private investment from your solo 401k. That's a prohibited transaction. So there are certain prohibited transaction rules to be aware of. And a company like my solo 401k financial is well versed on the prohibited transaction regulations. They can also shepherd you through those regulations. Now, once that investment is liquidated, so completely sold, the funds from that liquidation will flow back to the solo 401k plan, and they'll continue to be tax sheltered as long as they're inside that solo 401k plan, and then you can reinvest those funds again. So those are good items to understand. We do have some great FAQs on our website regarding making private investments. Take a look at that. Um, and again, um, please shoot over your questions. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to help get the word out to other solopreneurs. Let's take a look at some questions here. I got a question here. Do you mean buying a business, for example, inside your solo 401k? No, that's not what we mean with respect to investing in a private investment. What that means is that you're actually, instead of investing in a publicly traded stock like the Home Depot or Best Buy, you invest in a private equity fund, a private company. With regards to buying a business, that's actually done through a different type of 401k. That's done through what's referred to as a rollover business startup, aka business financing 401k, where you use your 401k to invest in a business where you are going to be a W-2 employee and it requires the use of a corporation. Not all private investments are registered as corporations. They're usually registered as limited partnerships, for example, LLCs, for example. But when we talk about a private investment, we're talking about investing in a private company where you are not an employee of the business and you are not going to be getting paid by that business, for example. It's a passive investment. That's a good way to describe it. It's still passive. Okay, we've got another question here. If my solo 401k was open in 2025, can you still make a 2024 contribution? Great question. The answer is that if the plan was open in 2025, it depends as to when it was opened and the type of self-employed entity type. For example, if your self-employed business is a sole proprietorship and you opened the solo 401k by April 15 of 2025, then you would have been able to make all contribution types by April 15. So you would have been able to make employee contributions, employer contributions, and of course, voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions. Now, if you open that solo 401k plan after April 15 of 2025, then you're going to be able to make certain types of solo 401k contributions for tax year 2024. And those are employer contributions as well as voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions. You can make those types of contributions by your business tax return due date plus timely filed extension. Now, if your self-employed business is any other entity besides one tax as a sole proprietorship, then you can open a solo 401k plan in 2025 and make 2024 contributions. However, you will only be able to make employer contributions and voluntary after-tax contributions, and you can do so by your business tax return due date plus timely filed extension. So in short, it depends on the entity type and on the contribution type. We have great resources on our website that cover this topic. Let me send over a link. And while I'm at it, I'm going to send over the link regarding investing in a private company through a solo 401k. I just went ahead and sent that over. And I'm going to go ahead and send over some links regarding making contributions to a solo 401k plan for 2024 for those who open a solo 401k plan in 2025, as you still have time to open it here in 2025 so that you can make certain types of contributions for tax year 2024. And let me share this link with you. Here's the link to that page. If you scroll down that page, you're going to be able to see right here, we have certain specific pages for each self-employed entity type so that you can determine when you can open that solo 401k in 2025 so that you can make 2024 contributions. All right. So again, today's topic was private investments in my 401k. We appreciate you joining today's daily webinar, asking your questions. We'll be covering more topics in future webinars. As always, we cover specific topics on each webinar. You can view all past recordings on our YouTube channel. Let's see if there are any other questions here before we finish up for today. Well, looks like there are no other questions. Thank you for joining today's daily webinar and have a good rest of the day.